Hey guys, it is April 15th, 2025. I want to talk about rotor blades and how to ensure you have the right size rotor blades for your RC helicopter. This is my Airstar Mongoose that I've been overhauling and refurbishing. So when I originally got it, I got these nice looking MAH rotor blades. They're carbon fiber. These are 830 millimeter rotor blades. Now, with this helicopter, the challenge that I faced was with the spare tail booms that I had them powder coated. This is alien green, trying to match as closely to the green of the replacement frames I put on there. They're a nice fluorescent green. The only problem was I was presuming that they were the same length tail booms, and unfortunately they weren't. And you have the tail belt that goes through. So with this tail boom, it was too long. So I literally had to get a pipe cutter and cut off this much of the tail boom, which this created a concern because now the main rotor blades were overlapping the tail rotor. And a quick test that you can do is if you get a string, this is just a piece of dental floss, you take it and put it out over the tip of your rotor blade and get it to go straight down. And it should not encroach, you know, past the, I'm trying to hold that down. You don't want it to go past the tail rotor. Now, with the original 830 millimeter blades, I'm going to put this through the bolt underneath so you can see how much extra was on there. And with that on there like that, turn the tail rotor, with that on there like that, if I can hold this on there, you can see that it was overlapping that blade. It was overlapping the blade by about 1 inch. And again, that comes into play because if it had that extra spacing, you know, of a standard length Airstar International tail boom, it wouldn't have been, you know, that far out. And this is just a little bit too far, as you can see. So the concern is with the blades can flex. Now granted, the rotor head on a RC helicopter is going to be more rigid than a full-scale helicopter, but you know, the way helicopters fly, you know, the whole rotor disc tilts forward or tilts back, and then also you introduce pitch, and you know, it is possible that, you know, the blade can flex down enough to actually hit your tail rotor if the blade overlaps your tail rotor. The other thing as well is you want to make sure that your blades are tightened with your bolt on there enough. You don't want them too tight, but you don't want them too loose. And at IRCHA a couple of years ago, I saw a guy doing some really hardcore, amazing 3D stuff, but his whole helicopter just exploded. And what ended up happening was he was just, you know, doing such hardcore 3D, the blades hit his tail boom, and you know, the whole rotor head, the blade system just exploded, you know, and it was a spectacular crash. And it's very possible that he had that crash because his bolts, you know, you have your lock nut on the bottom, and you know, you want it tight enough that the blades aren't just going to, you know, flop around. I mean, you should be able to hold the helicopter sideways and the blades shouldn't swing down. So when I was pretty new to the hobby, I was doing a practice auto rotation with my Vario Benzin Acrobatic, and when I came down to do my flare, the very bottom, you know, my flare, just before it touched, you know, right when it was hitting the ground, the blade nicked the tailboom, and they were the pretty much the same size. They were the white Vario blades. These are kind of an anthracite color, and I went ahead and painted the rotor tips yellow to add a little bit of character to it. It looks nice when the blades are spinning. But what can happen is, especially at low RPMs, if your blades are too loose, if the blade does this number here, you can see, you know, they can go a lot lower and they could strike your tailboom. So you do not want your blades too loose. And you know, it's the same way, like if the blade is I mean look at that. You can see how low that blade is going, you know, and it can strike your tailboom. And you know, if your blades are spinning fast enough, and you know, if it, I got lucky, it just put a white mark on my Vario Benzin Acrobatic. That was like a long time ago, probably around 2011, down at Fort Polk, Louisiana, at Honor Field. So you want to make sure that your blades are secure enough. I mean, you want them loose enough that the blades can lead and lag, and they can track to where they need to you know, hit, you know, a perfect harmonic balance with the opposing blade. But at the same time, you don't want them so loose that you're going to have a tailboom strike. Now, honestly, could I have potentially gotten away with keeping these 830 millimeter MAH blades on here? Probably. I don't do any hardcore 3D. I basically just do sport flying, and I fly very smoothly, and I don't really do any crazy aggressive maneuvers. So, you know, honestly, you know, the blades probably wouldn't have been really flexing all that much. And I'm not sure. I have to look into this. I don't know how much this rotor head moves, but all helicopters move. You know, you push forward cyclic, you know, the blades at its like highest pitch coming in this range, and on a full-scale helicopter, you know, it tilts the whole rotor disc, so the front goes down and the back goes up, and that provides thrust to get the helicopter to fly forward. I just don't see that much movement in this head, so it probably with the RC it mainly does it just through the pitch changes, you know, higher pitch in the back, lower pitch in the front, you know, and that gets you your thrust. But at the same time, like I said, I've seen it. You can see videos on YouTube where guys are doing some, you know, pretty intense hardcore 3D, and they have a blade strike, and that just disintegrates their helicopter. I mean, their blades are gone, you know, chops the tailboom off, and you know, you hate to see that. You know, it makes for a very spectacular crash. But it is important to make sure that you have the right size blades on your helicopter, because I mean, you have to think about it. I know on full-scale helicopters, the tail rotor spins at about a 7-to-1 ratio, so your tail rotor is spinning 7 times faster than what your main rotor blades are turning. And I'm sure it's kind of a similar ratio. It might even be more for the RC, so it might be 10, 12 times faster that your tail rotor is spinning compared to your RC's main rotor. So this tail rotor is just a solid disc. You know, the two blades are spinning so fast, you have this disc spinning. So if you have like a lot of pitch and the blades, you know, can probably bend somewhat, and I'm sure that they can come down. And I know for a fact if you can have a tail boom strike with your blades, if your main rotor blades are overlapping your tail rotor blades, then, you know, it is possible that, you know, the main rotor blades can strike. It doesn't have to be much. I mean, all it takes is a little nick, you know. So say that it hits this much of your tail rotor when you're doing some aggressive maneuvers, that's going to just shear your tail rotor completely off. So now you're going to be spinning out of control, trying to hit throttle hold, trying to do an auto rotation to save your helicopter. And this is even more critical for anybody out there who's doing, you know, some, you know, pretty aggressive maneuvers, doing, you know, aerobatics, hardcore 3D. And the Vario blades are nice. They work really well, I'm told, with the Airstar International Mongoose helicopters. They said this color is called anthracite. It's just kind of a gray color. And you also have to be careful with painting. You want to make sure that, you know, you're measuring it so that, you know, and